When I started my post-graduation in MBA, I had chosen finance as my specialization. I had other options like marketing, operations, HR, international business, but I had chosen finance. On paper, it looked like the right decision. Finance had scope, finance had respect, finance had better roles, and most of all, finance had better salaries, a lot of more money, and that's what I, got excited and went for finance. But within the first few weeks, I realized something that was an uncomfortable thing for me. I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't. Like the balance sheets and profit and loss statements and accounting terms that everyone else seemed to treat as obvious. And I found it really difficult. I was sitting in class, listening, taking notes, but none of it was sticking. None of it was sticking. And the worst part wasn't the subject itself. The worst part was looking around. Most of the people sitting next to me were from commerce background. Some had studied like accounting in 11th and 12th itself, and then they had graduations and post graduations in accounting. Some were chartered accountants as well. For them, this wasn't new. This wasn't new. This was a revision because they had already done it. I remember asking one of them casually, like, how are you finding all this? And he smiled and said, this is basic. This is basic. We did this years ago. Years ago. This is so basic. And that stuck with me. That sentence stuck with me. I still remember. Because suddenly, I wasn't just behind. I was starting from a different floor altogether. For the first time in my academic life, the effort wasn't enough. The effort wasn't enough. I could work hard, but I was working hard on a weak foundation. On a weak foundation. Every lecture assumed knowledge I didn't have. Every assignment reminded me of that gap. Every assignment. And that's when the comparison started. I started measuring myself against people who had a head start of 5 to 6 years or even more when they had done this in their commerce 11th and 12th. Not because they were smarter, but because they had simply seen this world earlier, which I was just exposed to now during my MBA. At one point, I genuinely questioned my decision. Did I choose the wrong specialization? Should I move to marketing or operations or probably do HR or international business? Was I forcing myself into something that clearly wasn't built for me? That phase was mentally really exhausting. Really exhausting. Because from the outside, everything looked fine, right? I was in a good reputed institute. I was doing my MBA. I was on track. And the specialization was also great looking from outside. But internally, it felt like I was constantly catching up. I was constantly catching up. Then someone gave me advice that felt almost embarrassing to hear because one of my friend, he found that I was really struggling and every time I was going to him asking for questions. So he said, why don't you go back to the basics? Pick up 11th and 12th accounting books and you can go through it and revise. At first, I dismissed it. I had already completed my graduation in engineering. I was doing my post-graduation. Going back to school level books like 11th and 12th felt like moving backwards. But after a few more weeks of struggle, I realized an important thing here. Pride wasn't helping me learn. My pride of not going back to school, younger textbooks was not helping me anyways. So I bought these books. I bought those books. And to my surprise, even those were not easy. I thought, it will be so easy now. I will just go through the books for some days and it will be fine. But I struggled there too. That's when I made a decision that at the time felt uncomfortable, really uncomfortable, but necessary. That was necessary. I joined an accounting class. Meant for 11th and 12th grade students. 11th and 12th grade students. I was senior to them. I had already done 11th, 12th, 4 years of engineering, doing my post-graduation in MBA, and I had joined that class. I was easily the oldest person in that room. Oldest person. Everyone else was preparing for, their 11th and 12th exams. I was preparing to survive my MBA. I won't lie. Walking into that class was awkward. Really awkward. But something interesting happened over the next few weeks when I was going to the class. for the first time. The first time the things started making sense to me. Things started making sense to me. Not an MBA level, not at that level, but at the foundation level. Debit what comes in, credit, why entries exist, why statements connect the way they do, the profit and loss statements, the income statements. Slowly, I started to learn that. Once that base became clear, the MBA subject slowly stopped feeling alien. I wasn't suddenly the best student in the class. No, I was not. But I was no longer lost. That's what was happening with me before. And that changed everything for me. What I learned from that phase stayed with me far beyond my MBA. Here's the lesson that is missed by many people. When you are behind, it's often not because you lack ability. It's because you skipped a layer. And no amount of pressure or comparison can compensate for that. Going backward to rebuild fundamentals isn't regression, it's leverage. Because when I went back and did that class, that was a leverage I built. Most people don't do it because it hurts the ego. I know it, I felt my ego hurt at the time. But they would rather struggle silently at a higher level than restart properly. That decision, swallowing your ego, rebuilding the basics, that's what allowed me to complete my MBA the way I wanted. I would have completed it anyways, right? But that's the way I completed it, the way I wanted. And later in my career, I saw this pattern repeat everywhere. In jobs, in leadership roles, in new domains. It doesn't matter if you are in India or in United States or any country in the world. People don't fail because they are incapable. They fail because they try to perform at a level their foundation doesn't support. It doesn't support. If you are in a phase where things feel harder than they should, if everyone around you seems ahead, the way it was feeling for me, pause before concluding anything about yourself. Don't do that. Ask a simple question. What layer did I skip? Because once you fix that, progress becomes quiet, steady, and sustainable. That realization changed how I approached learning for the rest of my career. And if you are early in yours, it might save you years of unnecessary self-doubt. You have to remember that. Because if you don't go back to the basics and don't swallow your ego, you are never going to basically fix your foundation the way I went back. I am glad I did it. I hope you remember this.